And now, the International Vienna for Everyone. And now, the International Vienna for Everyone.
As I was saying, Ismail, it's good to finally have you here.
It is my pleasure. It is my pleasure. Thank you for reaching out. As I said, during the summers I'm mostly busy. Being a rock star.
What have you been up to? I followed you a little bit on Instagram. I see you here and there.
Some reconnaissance, right?
Yeah.
So in the summer, as I said, I am a touring musician, live touring musician. So I just was touring my next EP project. Skinny Coco presents The Kingdom of Love. And
The Kingdom of Love.
The Kingdom of Love.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, Skinny Coco presents The Kingdom of Love. That's the next one. We could get into that a bit later, I guess. And so just basically picked a couple of cities around Europe, because last year the project was Skinny Coco presents Mein Wein in Wien. And that was a project that was sort of a very much reintroduction of myself to, I guess, a Vienna audience, and from back South Africa or so, of Skinny Coco the musician. But other than that, in my sort of everyday life, sort of 9 months of the year, I am just an academic. 8 months technically, but I'm academic, teaching at the Institute for African Studies.
What do you teach?
isiZulu. So my home language from South Africa. So I do that. So yeah, linguist by trade. That is what
I'm very interested to hear more about that.
Oh, we can chat about that.
So what is...
How's come out? Yeah.
Is it... how many students do you have?
Currently now, for this year, I believe in each class, I think we got about 8 students total.
Who are you teaching it to?
Well,
Who are your students?
Generally, how it works is, so at the Institute of African Studies, there's sort of 3 main focus areas that you would go into if you come in for the bachelor's, per se. So there is the section for literature, and then there is the, obviously, languages, right? And then the other side is history and society. Right, and so under the languages branch, you can learn 3 languages at the university or at the institute, and that would be Hausa, Swahili, and isiZulu. So I'm representing basically East, somewhat Central, West, and Southern Africa. So that's basically that. So I've been doing that since about 2020. The reason I moved here, basically.
Why do your students want to learn that? Because I guess your students are not from South Africa.
No. A majority of them are not. Most of them are German, Austrian speakers. Some have, very interestingly, over the last 4 years, have had a very interesting mix of students. Some have sort of familial roots. Some students who maybe have one parent that comes from Southern Africa, also, and would like to sort of learn the language to sort of be able to communicate with their grandparents and their extended family or so. But, the course itself is not really like a Sprachkurse. It is a linguistic university course. So we do look at, the language itself. We look at semantics, we look at orthography, and some of the projects have to do with lexicography. So we've been building our own dictionary for the last 4 years. So the general interest areas come from students who are generally studying from the bachelor's level.
I'm just removing this because I want to get more sound of you.
Yeah.
Okay.
So from a bachelor's level, they would be studying, African studies as their bachelor degree, and that would then span different interest areas, as I said. So students who have an interest in languages would then choose one of the 3 languages, and that would form part of their bachelor degree at the university. And what I've found over the last 4 years, the interest itself, I guess, is also balanced with, I think, when it was time during 2020, Black Lives Matter, we had a huge influx of interest of students in general, of wanting to know more about Africa. That is sort of the first sort of launch.
But that's very cool. I thought it would be mainly people who are about to move to South Africa because of business or something, but it's purely out of passion and because they want to learn more about it.
Yes. It is.
That's very cool.
As I say, it is a university degree. So it's not really geared towards sort of this, not like learn Zulu in 5 weeks.
Yeah, it's not Duolingo, just learning how to order your own coffee, and that's it, because you're having a trip in South Africa.
The less said about Duolingo, the better. There's that. But so I think And then there's also just some people just like myself who are just very, very, very interested in languages. And, I guess with the access to sort of the Nguni and Bantu sort of language family, isiZulu gives a great sort of launch pad into, if you ever have interest of going to South Africa, it is the most spoken language in South Africa by quite some bit. And also then the access that you gain from learning isiZulu and being able to interact with other languages makes it quite a lot easier, and there's other things like, for example, there are similarities between isiZulu and Swahili. Obviously, they come from the same language family, so basically cousins. But generally, it's also the course I also add in quite a lot of historical and cultural relevant knowledge for that, because some students might also be taking it as part of, studying for history and societies or wanting to understand those things. And then, interestingly, I also have had students who are like astrophysicists doing their doctorates in that, or the PhD, and just as a way to keep their mind sharp, they wanted to learn another language. So the classroom that I have every semester is always very interesting, because I only have one of sort of each reason. I start the semester by asking, why are you learning this language? Why are you in this classroom? So yeah, that's my.
But English is also your native language, isn't it?
No.
How would you call it?
I learned English only when I was, I'd say maybe like 5-6 years old.
But you learned it in South Africa.
Yes.
So, but anyway, what I mean is the language that you learn throughout life, and Malay because you're not going in course, and because you also speak English home, right?
No, I do not speak English.
Okay.
I speak Zulu with my mother and father.
Not at home in family. I mean, in South Africa, there are 2 languages, or
there's 11 official.
11 official.
Yes, so we have 11 official languages, and depending on the region that you come from, I come from East Coast, KwaZulu-Natal. I was born in Durban, and that's sort of the Indian Ocean side, and KwaZulu-Natal is basically the Kingdom of Zululand. That's where most of the Zulu people are, or AmaZulu are. And yeah, that's generally is that, and then also concentrated in Gauteng, where Johannesburg and Pretoria are. Johannesburg more than Pretoria has a lot of Zulu speakers, but generally in most of South Africa, if you can speak Zulu, you can conversate with quite a large populace of at least the non-white population with that.
That's what I wanted to ask. Does it make a big difference to get to know the culture and the people if you speak Zulu or if you speak only English? Or
I think all languages. So for me, for example, I speak right now, I think 8 languages. 8 languages in total, learning a 9th.
Yeah.
But this is just out of passion. It's just that it's passion, and also where I grew up and how I grew up.
You speak German?
Yeah.
So yeah.
Some Deutsch sprechen.
I wonder how you can learn German out of passion.
Well, it does help. It does help. Sort of having had a large part of my 20s in a relationship with someone who's German. But I think that's even sort of maybe a little bit of like an overreach. We never spoke German with each other. We just spoke English. But one of the reasons I moved to Vienna was a change in careers. Because my background is actually in commerce, finance, economics, business law.
That's what you studied, right?
Yes. That's what I studied at UP. And then sort of at 24, I was just like, well, I would like a little bit of a change. And it sort of coincided with this time of like, okay, I really want to sort of, continue this relationship with this person. And hey, let's see, it's either you move to South Africa or I just jet over to Vienna and see and schauen wir mal, baby. So I did that. But
was there ever an option that she would move to South Africa with you?
Oh, yeah.
Why didn't that happen?
No comment.
Okay, no problem.
No comment. I think that's...
But I guess you're anyway happy now that you chose to live in Vienna?
I think it's more...
How do you feel
I'm happy about the career change and what I'm doing. I think, it was really great for me working in the profession that I had before and using my knowledge. I come from a sort of business-minded, very pragmatic family. My father's an engineer, my mom's in finance and IT. So sort of like this, A-type sort of workaholic, pragmatic, lifestyle was sort of something I was raised with my entire time. But then I always knew that in my 50s I would like to teach, a la, Dead Poet Society.
Yeah.
Like, exactly. Like,
Or captain, my captain.
Captain, my captain. I knew that after I did everything, earned all my money, bought myself a yacht, sort of thing, I just wanted to go teach, like history and English at my old high school or something like that. And that was that. And then, I guess the universe works in mysterious ways, and got the opportunity. And I was like, well, let's go.
Did you propose what you are teaching at the University of Vienna, or was already existent and there was an opening for that?
Oh no, it had not existed. It hadn't existed. I think what happened was there was a transition point. I think the person who was teaching the language before was Bambara, and they then an opening came up in terms of considering which language to fill this in, and then of course I applied with this after conversation with the university at the point, and obviously applied a teaching methodology and all these things that you do. And I'm now just part of a team. Myself and Dr. Wood basically have just been spearheading the Zulu camp, or the community, or that we sort of instilled from day one. So that also means creating our own resources, building the dictionary that we use, and hopefully will be more accessible for people over the years.
Are you also part of a research about it? Is this also part of a research?
My research actually is,
By the way, that would be the perfect distance. I would want you to be to the microphone.
So
it's not one of those orientated ones. You have to go after the microphone.
My research is actually in oral history and oral traditions, and the knowledge transfer of that. And I've been filming a documentary over the last 2 years about this, right? It's called Sounds Like History, Amahubo and the Knowledge Transfer Systems of Amazulu, which is, for me, is basically like a multi-part research project that has little avenues and things that I bring in sort of my very business mind in terms of trying to make the most impactful studies and things, but also taking all this knowledge and not just writing a paper or a thesis and it sort of sits on a shelf and it's sort of academic fraternity and then no one sees it, but it's also expanding it out and making interesting, impactful, entertaining documentaries for other people to interact more readily and easily with these concepts, about how is knowledge stored and transferred over time in cultures and traditions where oral history was how it was passed on, and for example, the Nguni tribes, which would be, basically Amaxhosa people, Zulu, Swati, and Ndebele, and I guess quite a large portion of Africa, of that, lots of the history is passed down through storytelling.
That's exactly what I wanted to ask.
Yeah.
How popular are all those things you're talking about in Africa, and is it the same compared to the unpopularity that they have, at least in Western European countries?
I think unpopular, I would steer away from using that. I think in terms of, I think all cultures have oral traditions and oral histories, because this is also songs. So Amahuba themselves are songs that are central to the cultural, political, and social lives of Amazulu. And what they have is basically, what I'm sort of trying to capture is, on one side, I'm trying to capture all of these Amahubo before the sort of older generation who know all of them, because there's ones that store family history, national history, regional histories through these things. And, there's no one specifically that is, archiving all of these. It's not to transform it, but to save it so that it's accessible for generations, further generations. When I think about my children, I'm like, wow, okay, what's going to happen with them? If I'm no longer around to share these Amahubo, or teach them the family songs that talk about the family history, who was their great-great-grandfather, this and this and that and that. And these are still very much in KwaZulu-Natal. There's still strong pockets of this where Amahubo and the traditions are still very strong, but when you go further and further away from KwaZulu-Natal, also and more into urban areas, these things get lost because of, the way that our lives have changed over time, urbanization and all that. Yeah. So I would say in terms of how popular it is, I wouldn't say popular. I'd say how it still happens. They still take place. They're still there, but they're just they're not spreading to the next generation as much as it was, for example, just from my parents' generation. And then you look before and before.
Why do you think is that it's not being, let's say, inherited anymore as much as it was before? Could it be because the younger generation are bored about history and they don't want to get to know more about their culture, or it's the technology and social media that made them care less?
I honestly don't think it's actually anything to do with, and I had to think about this the other day when I was sitting in the studio editing these things, and I honestly don't think that the onus of learning about history the weight of that can be put on sort of the younger generation. I think it is the onus of an older generation to make a concerted effort.
That's why we're responsible.
Yes. Mm-hmm. You are the keeper of knowledge, and it is your sort of effort it is, I would say, duty to pass on this knowledge to the next generation, because these are the things that are important. And I think in all cultures, when I meet, friends from, I have friends from all over, and, when I meet friends from sort of Eastern Europe specifically, and they tell me about these songs or that friends from, Latvia and Estonia, and, they sing these songs. I'm like, wow, that's storing there's lots of history in there. And it's just passed on. This keeps the national heritage alive, And the onus of learning those is, I believe, from the parents and the grandparents and the community to pass those on. And then how we do it and how we capture attention, that for me is why I choose documentaries as my medium as an academic, rather than just, writing a paper and then being like, well, now
it's up to you to read it.
Yeah, it's up to you to read it. I think.
But you want to present it to them in a form that they can really absorb it.
Yes. And I think, I shudder sometimes. Now I've made peace with it, but it is infotainment.
Yeah.
Information entertainment. Yeah. And, we are fighting for attention, but I don't really think that our attention spans really have gone that much down. I think it's more.
You think so?
I think it's just more that we have things presented to us in better packages, it's sort of, it's like saying, like we eat more as humans. I think we just made things a lot tastier with less nutrients, in that, don't quote me, I'm not a food scientist or so, but it's more, from my point of view, I think that I see the looks on my students every single week, just when I give them little bits of nuggets of, Zulu history, culture history, and then even in their assignments, I get them to write about their histories in isiZulu, right? So this is sort of my second years, and they get on to writing for our in-class, in-house journal, which is called What Would a Zulu Do, which is basically, thoughts about the world by Vienna-based isiZulu students, and then they get to go research their history. And then you obviously use a different language to store that. But in that process, they're sort of actively participating in this history and cultural preservation,
Yeah, but we're talking about academic life, and you're probably surrounded by a lot of people whose attention span is much, much bigger than the average young generation nowadays. So I don't know if you're aware, but people nowadays can't watch a video for longer than 2 seconds if it's boring, or 4 seconds. I think the study said that it was 4 seconds. And if you look on the subway or somewhere on public transportation when they're waiting, if you stare at other people's phone, which is impolite, but I still do sometimes, and they just watch the video, a new video comes in with, I guess it's TikTok because they slide up. And they just watch it for 1.5 seconds, and that's it. They move to the next one, and then to the next one, to the next one.
Well, my theory is that, as I also said, part of my history in my undergrad, I worked on radio for almost 5 years of my life, and that's where Skinny Coco came from. Okay. That was my thing. And one thing I learned about my time in radio is, I think, we all want to be enthralled. We want to be inspired. We want this, there's things that's just, you watch something, you're like, whoa, You put on a clip of Sir David Attenborough just speaking about this, maybe this little brown mouse, walking through, and you can see people, they just get captivated. And I think that as we sort of fall into this, and I'm just coming from sort of what I've seen from a practical point of view, as working in radio where you have 30 seconds to a minute to do your links, especially working on a music radio, then it's thinking, how do I speak? How do I, use my tone of voice to capture a person, instead of saying, welcome to the show, it's like, hey, welcome to the show. This is what we're doing today. This is this, and you're sort of like pushing this energy towards them. And, 9 times out of 10, then people sort of like be like, oh, okay. Oh, wait, this is worth watching. Because people still went to go watch Oppenheimer. There's like 3 hours long.
Yeah, but there were more people who watched Barbie on the other.
Yeah, but that's also a long film. Yeah, there's a long film.
But it doesn't have, it doesn't have the same depth and action. And even if you analyze it a little bit more, the script structure, there's more action happening. So Barbie is totally out of the book, so it's written by the books. So, but Oppenheimer is not.
Yeah,
that's why Barbie works more. There's the first 10 minutes, then there's some plot, something happens, and then the movie starts. Second act starts, and all that.
Yeah,
which it's not the same thing with Oppenheimer. So even that, in that case, I would say that people chose to watch Barbie over Oppenheimer because it's easier to watch.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm amazed that people want to learn such a far culture from a physical culture just out of passion.
Yeah, trust me. I'm amazed every single year when I have sign-ups. It's but I think, back to that. I think with Oppenheimer and all those examples, I think they're fair. I think one thing that has changed, and I see it across most creative spaces, I think also the quality of work that goes into projects and what the expectation of the outcomes are. I think over time we've sort of like, I would say we do look for the path of least resistance, and I think that's probably just a human thing. But there are those, once in a generation special things that maybe sort of correct, our way of as humans, and maybe taking more time for certain things. And that's where I sort of put my energy into why make a 45 to 55 minute documentary about a subject matter that if someone from the title won't even know specifically what it is. My title of my documentary is Sounds Like History. That's it. That's that. Yes, you can read more about it, but it's then from that first step, I make the soundtrack. I'm making the soundtrack myself. We were down in South Africa for 2 months filming this past winter here, summer there. And even how we set it up, the choice of lens for the camera, all that, it was from that first moment, I want it to be a full immersive experience. I think when you think about TikTok, I scroll on TikTok. I know the same thing, but it's even when I sort of curated or started searching for things that are more along my thing, there's sometimes where I'll just like watch a TikTok video for 3 minutes, because the quality, I think with that, I've seen that the quality has increased in terms of production like value to
capture more attention to making good content.
Yes, and I think we can't decrease the noise. I think more and more content is going to go out, more and more and more and more and more. But then I think what gets through is the cream that rises to the top. It is the quality of the work that shines through at the end of the time. And it might not be in 1 year. It might not be in 2 years. It might maybe only be in 5 years. Where someone's like, wow, that was a culturally relevant moment there. And that was a culturally relevant film. And then it sort of goes through this renaissance, because then the content creators of today, might inspire then sort of the directors of tomorrow making films as this change of regard happens. So, yeah, in my view, I think everybody has the capacity to. I've seen has the capacity for limitless attention. It's just that I think sometimes the quality of the content that we have available to us, there's so much, but we have to put it on a scale of, what is the quality? If we had to do a Rotten Tomatoes scale of it, I think quite a lot of it is pretty much like below par. It's cannon fodder.
It's way more competitive now with the freedom that internet has given to everyone. It's way more competitive because
yes,
you're right. It needs camera lenses and all that, but there are content creators who still shine even with low quality equipment because the content is very good. And before you'd never get your movie into the movie theater if it wasn't good quality, even like camera quality or technical qualities. Now you can just upload on the internet, and still I'm a bit disappointed that it's still a matter of algorithm. If the algorithm is going to suggest it or not to the rest people or to the people in general.
Yeah, I think you've mentioned something there where I will agree with you. Where I find a problem as well with that is that, remember when clickbait used to be like a funny thing?
Yeah.
Like, like ha ha ha, and that was clickbait.
Yeah.
I think now most content, to the point where it just feels like everything is clickbait or watch bait, It's like 5 seconds. I think which I think from one side is very intriguing if you look at it from a marketing point of view and you look at it from a business point of view. I think, the immersive qualities of advertisements, I think has really, really like grown, but also sometimes it blurs a line to like, wait, is this an advert or is this is this actually the person just making content?
Yeah.
So I think it's a double-edged sword in that sense. But then I also, so I think it's a double-edged sword in that sense. But from a quality point of view,
because it's a shame sometimes there are so good things that are just not where they should be, and that's all because of algorithm. For example, take your songs. I love all of your songs, and or at least I guess I listen to most of them. They are on Spotify.
Yeah,
because I don't know all your songs, I guess. So I'm 100% sure I say this with 100% assurance that they deserve much more audience, much bigger audience, and all that. But it's all in the hands of the algorithm. There was a guy a couple of months ago. He just made a song, like his first song. He's from the US. He was also on a podcast. He suddenly became famous with no promotion. He just made a song. He filmed it with a single take with a camera. Just him singing. So, there's no like huge video clip or something like that, but it just went huge. It has like almost 75 million views in 2 months. He's not known. He's 40 years old. He's been singing for 15, 20 years since he was 20 or something, but just for fun or at the local pub or something like this. Why? Just because of the algorithm. And the song was just all right. It wasn't nothing special. And I hate that it's on the hands of the robots or computers to promote your song.
I think with Mindvine and Veed, I think it's a very specific project in of itself. I think if you listen to it, the project itself, I'm more focused on being a live touring musician, right? I think my online presence is basically a very open and honest, curated sort of snapshot of what it is to experience my music, right? And my whole point is really not trying to, I think, it's like what Kanye said, is that, what's the point in selling records if you're not connecting, And I think for me, those people that have listened to my music are the ones that come to my shows, who come to when we've been over the summer, Switzerland, Budapest, Slovakia, playing gigs around Vienna, prepping for more things and building slowly, and with that, having this loyal connection where people now, having toured the Kingdom of Love, they also understand the transformation from as me as an artist in that. And I think, this is where I say, the numbers are fudged at this point. The very fact, that now you can pay for verification shows that the age of the influencer is over. It's over. The age of the influencer is over. So the numbers don't mean anything. To the point, I think at this point, you could basically pay around 2,000 euros to these playlist companies or whatever to put your song on a playlist. You'll get your million streams, and in Austria or so you'll get around back maybe 4,000 to 5,000 euros, right? As what Spotify will pay you. So you will walk out there at least with a grand on top of it. But now the question is, for me as someone who also has hosted events for quite some time in Vienna, as if we go back into how I started with building, bringing like Skinny Coco from South Africa and into Vienna. You don't build a connection, because then you're like, well, now I want to do a show, right? So then I'm one of the people in Vienna who organize such things and connect people with each other. And I would just then say, like, hey, I would say, okay, but then how many people can you bring in? If you want to get paid sort of this much, or tickets cost or whatever, how many people would do you think you can bring in? It's like, maybe like 20, 30. It's like, well, you've got 150,000 streams on your songs, and that you have 10,000 followers, but none of those converted to real world things.
Because it's not organic.
It's not organic. So then the question is, what matters more? And I think the clicks, the links, the all this sort of online, I would say at this point, fugazi, I myself sort of, I enjoy social media. I think it's absolutely amazing, but it's much like arbitrary sort of, connections with, okay, I'm living in Austria, and this is the assumption of what it should be to live in Austria, and that without actually going out and being like, hey, what is this city to me? Looking at it. It's not looking at only the top 10 guides of which cafes to go to. It's actually just walking around for 20 minutes and just stumbling into a cafe and being like, damn, that's beautiful. Yeah. I didn't know that. So I think it is that balance, with artistry. It's like to be an artist for 20, 25 years, and you play 5 to 6 shows a year to maybe 100 to 1,000 people. But those people, they're like, every time you have a show, they're like, my gosh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
It's like this longevity versus this, quick spike, and I think the algorithm has helped a lot of people also maintain their careers over a long time, which is great. But I think it's just the balance of the two things, at the end.
But you're right. You mentioned the verification of social media, and I was just today in a workshop about how to use social media for business, related to the international platform. And we were just looking at a statistic when they first introduced that you can buy the verified badge. Yeah. And it seems like it went up for a month, it went very high for a month, like suddenly a lot of people purchased it. And then the next month was almost where it was before it started, as low as that. Yeah. Because people saw that there's no point to that. If you can just buy the verification badge, why you want to buy a verification badge?
Everyone's verified, no one's verified.
Yeah, exactly. So if I verify my account, I just verify it through an ID, and it's like they send you a verification email or something like that. Yeah. And it's verified. Then if anyone has a badge, then we are all the same. It goes back to where we were. We were all the same. Yeah. So it makes no sense anymore.
Yeah, they're probably going to release a black badge or something.
Or it's probably one could be that, or second could be that they're going to make it more expensive. So in the future, it will automatically associate with an expensive thing. Like with a designer's bag or shoes or something. So immediately when you see it, that costs it a lot. And it could be the same thing with that. Like when you see that this guy or girl has a verified profile, immediately you understand that she's paying $200 per month. Oh, yeah. So she must be sort of rich.
Yeah. What's the thing now? Man, I should remember these terms, economic terms, like a Vorstutgut or something like that. Yeah. Goods that that are just expensive just because, and you buy them, associated with luxury.
Exactly. They just want to be associated with luxury.
Or basically conspicuous consumption. That's what I was looking for. It's just conspicuous consumption. Spending money so you can show other people that you can spend money.
Yeah, exactly. That's a nice term to think about. But how do you manage with organizing your tour for summertime? Because you're working all semester, you're teaching, then you're working on a documentary, and then you're doing your research, which is part of the documentary as well. And you're saying that you're involved with the documentary up to the point that you choose the lenses. So it's not that you only written something about it, but you're 100% involved in the documentary. It's yours.
Well, I would have to admit, and I think a wise man once told me, is know what you know what you don't know, and know how to get people who know more than you to help you, in a sense, and delegate, just read that. So I am blessed to, at this point, and I would have to say, it is because of the dedication that I put into my craft over all these years to get to a point where I'm like, well, I now have a manager for Skinny Coco and Team Coco and all that. And with the documentary, I'm working with an absolutely amazingly talented videographer from Lesotho, Tespa Manepanes, or Tespa JPG or JPEG, and he was there with me. So we went down. He was my videographer, and we sit down, and he basically, I would be like, yeah, I'm looking for this look or whatever, and he'd be like, okay, this lens, and then I would look through these things, and then it'd be like, okay, I think that's that. What do you think? We try that out. So I think at this point is know that you can't do everything by yourself, because that's how I can stay so busy in a sense, but my week is a very relaxed week. I think living in Vienna has really taught me work-life balance, and that's what I seeked out. And it's delegation and being part of an absolutely amazing community. That sort of, when I need some help or that, or spreading, events or word or so.
I've seen you very connected with comedians community in Vienna. Is that true?
Yes.
How come you connected mainly with them? Because it's not one. I've seen you with a lot of those guys.
Well, because they're funny.
That was a very obvious answer. How can you ask me that? They are funny, of course.
They're funny, and I love to laugh. Like, I think, life is crazy and can get really sad, and these things. But laughter and laughing at yourself is something, is a gift that keeps on giving, and just being around people who just are especially the Vienna comedy scene. I never expected to walk into such an amazing scene, and I'm boyfriend funny at best. That's it. Like, I'm boyfriend funny at best. Like, it's my partner, and they would laugh at my jokes. That's that. Maybe I'll say like one zinger here and there, And so I had no things of like, I'm going to jump onto the stage and I'm going to be like, the South African Dave Chappelle or something like that. But it just started out with, just going to comedy shows, and I'm just a social person when I'm out. When I'm out, I'm like, well, I want to conversate with people and sort of get to know like what makes them tick, because I think you surround yourself with people who are just operating on this, transcendent like mindset and level. It sort of helps you with your own, and so I guess that's that. And I got to know them, and now pretty much most of my social time is when they have a show, I really try. And lately now it's been the summer, obviously it was a little bit harder, but now I'm looking forward to the autumn and just going to as many shows as possible and just laughing.
And they got the comedy pub now.
Yeah,
I was there a couple of weeks ago. I loved it.
Awesome. That's absolutely amazing. So So 9 times out of 10, if it's English comedy in Vienna, I'm probably somewhere, somewhere there. Somewhere there.
You also sing there, right? Sometimes.
No.
But I've seen you in one of those shows. That's how I saw you at first.
Yeah, I think
in Gus Horn with Gus Horn.
So Gus asked me to play. He's absolutely lovely, amazing.
He's a great guy.
And great guy.
Both literally and morally.
Yeah. And I was like, yeah, you're my buddy, let's go. Like, it's not something that I would like just do per se, but I was like, for your comedy special, that's that. It was intriguing seeing some people be like, what, there's music at a comedy show? But I think it worked out in a sense. But that's that.
How did you go with the tour? I'm very interesting. How did you go with the tour?
Fantastic. Absolutely fantastic.
Where did you had your best audience?
Oh, I have to. Oof.
Or I'd start with what do you call a good audience? Like the audience that claps more, that sings more, that cheers more, or that listens more.
It has nothing to do with, for me, it has nothing to do with what I get from it. Sort of that. Yes, claps and cheers are appreciated and all of that. I think I would have to say the best audience though was at the album launch of The Kingdom of Love here in Vienna. I think because they were the first to hear the whole project, raw with the band, sort of, straight out the gate. I really didn't release any teasers, and it's not out yet because I wanted to tour the album first before I'm in studio cutting it. But then in terms of getting the theme and the understanding of what the project is, I have to give it to Slovakia. Like the Slovakians have been.
A lot of people say that.
Oh, I'm just smiling thinking about it. Like I'm thinking of the next gig that I have in November, and I'm just like, we've got some surprises in store because I think that will be my last gig of the year, so I can just focus on Christmas and relaxing. And that's I would say then Slovakia was just absolute. We've been back there at least 3-4 times, since, because they just wanted more and we wanted more. So it's just this perfect romance of intensity, and I'm also feeling this like the rawness of like the whole point of the Kingdom of Love, and the whole message about it. On one side, the Kingdom of Love is another world building project. So all my projects, I create this sort of world and a character or so. So Mind, Vine and Veen was literally like stepping into my mind as Nathi, and then sort of expanding outwards into sort of like Mind, Vine and Veen. So my whining in Vienna, but also my love and enjoyment for red wine. So those go hand in hand together, on the road to healing, cry a bit and drink some wine, it's perfect. And the Kingdom of Love then follows the adventures of Prince Skinius Kokomo, first of his name, and his hijinks adventure on how he wants to take his family, which is a long lost family of the Kingdom of Love, and bring it back to its rightful place. So now it's this whole adventure. So it's sort of like, it's going to be a la sort of old school hip hop albums with like skits in between it, where I do the voiceovers and all those things. Are quite a production. And then the message about it is about, this journey into oneself and outwardly from oneself of love, accepting love, being love, defending love, and all that. And all the songs sort of like fit into these things. And it's modeled basically over the 5 love languages of that, the whole project. And each place it's always great seeing people like surprised, and then sort of just feel the vibe and just know that like, oh, okay, yeah, this is what it is.
Talking about the vibe, how comfortable would you be, let's say, where the stage is, where you usually sing, right in front of you, there's a camera pointed at the audience? Or at least imagine as if it was a camera pointing at the audience, but there is no audience as a screen. And on the other hand, the audience has VR glasses.
Okay.
Looking at you and the rest of the people who are in the concert or something. Do you think it'd be the same vibe? You can hear them, they can hear you.
Okay. There's a camera pointed at the audience.
Yes, you're in a different room, and imagine if the camera was pointed at the audience, so you are seeing the audience in a screen just right in front of you, just as you watch them in a concert, right? But just you're not there, you're separated. You're in a small room, just like this one. And imagine you have just this screen right here next to you, and it's in front of you, and the audience has just VR glasses, and they are not even there. And do you think this will be the future?
No.
Of the concerts?
No, not even by a long shot. I think we also have to understand that. So I would do that for like a gimmick or something, have like a concert that you can jump into, with the metaverse or something like that. I would do that. But in terms of if I want people to feel my music, I always say to people, it's like, I specifically produce my songs with differences to how they are live. There's the live version and there's the curated sort of like art piece. So when I'm playing live, one thing that I always do is I start and I just throw a whole lot of energy into the room, into the audience, and sort of like break the ice. And then from there I try to then flip it and sort of be very, very sensitive to what the energy is coming from the audience. And, there's this thing of just looking at someone, from stage while you're playing, and it's all automatic at this point. So, I'm thinking, like sometimes I'll be playing, I'll be middle in a song, even through a solo, I'll be thinking like, man, like I'm so looking forward to like some chicken nuggets after this. And there's some moments where I'm playing and I can see someone just, in awe, or, some songs that I have, see someone just sort of like crying, that and connecting with them and knowing that you're in the same room, you can sort of feel that energy, and you can feel it when a room is bubbling up, when it's just different. It's live music for a reason, and then once the crowd is sort of just, it doesn't also have to do with loudness, even in the moments where, I'm doing soft, quiet, silent songs or so, that you can sometimes hear a pin drop, in the moments of silence, those moments of selah, I don't think that we're going to really get to a point that we're in like a Ready Player One sort of music.
Do you think we'll get to that point, even though they are using AI so much right now?
Well, it's going to be there. It's just not going to feel the same.
Yeah, it will definitely not feel the same. But I think that it will be there, and there will be many artists who will accept this.
Definitely, it will be there. Yeah. But if you saw, was it U2 with that big like ball stage or whatever? That's like huge immersive experience. I just saw like clips of it.
Oh yeah,
that's the future. Where it's the interactions of these two, where there's a crowd, and then it's like you're in this whole new world, but you're there, because there's, if you go out, and like I do love techno as well, so there's a difference between sort of like listening to techno in your headphones, and just be like, oh yeah, that's amazing, and then just like feeling the sound system like throw so much bass at you, and like your rib cage is basically going like, oh, it's different. It's different, and both can exist, but I don't think one will sort of take away the existence of the other.
Well, I want to stop you to that. Do you think that it's the same experience? I get it that when you're in a disco and you feel the sound system moving over your body, but do you think that you'd feel the same emotions if you were alone in the disco, and compared to how would you feel when the disco is packed? So what I'm trying to say is it the same? Is that feeling coming really from the sound system, or because of the fact that it's a crowd there and you are all enjoying, and you're also getting the vibes of other people, not just yours? Because you can have great headphones and you still feel the sound system. But if there's no one around you, that's where the difference is, or not?
I would say, just I think generally it is the people. We're human. We're social. Yeah. We even for myself as someone who loves their alone time and being in their own space. There's moments where I'm just like, okay, cool. This introvert needs to go outside now, and
now I have to go get a beer in a pub.
Or just like hang out with my friends and just like maybe just laugh or that sort of thing. It's like watching a stand-up comedy like special at home just by yourself. It is hilarious.
Yeah.
Then you just add like one or two of the people. That's something, right? But then watching it live, it's just it's a whole different experience. It's I've seen people being like, oh, I've watched stand-up comedy before, being in just videos, like, oh, I didn't find it funny. Then I take them to a live comedy show and they're like, my gosh, this is totally different. I'm like, yeah, because you can also feel like, the awkwardness sometimes at some jokes, or you can feel this like sigh of relief when, sort of people get the thing, or there's just like unadulterated, like laughing at oneself in a moment. If you sort of like, we're asked a question, you answered, and a comedian like makes of things. I think those interactions between us as humans is something that's very important. And I can't foresee a world where we live in our own sort of like little bubbles and don't interact with ourselves. And best of all, we can see that it doesn't really make a healthy society for the 2 years that we had, sort of COVID.
Yeah.
Or so we could see people were just going stark raving mad,
Yeah. Well, the problem, or maybe not the problem, but we're slowly approaching that kind of world. And for these months, for example, the new the new glasses from Meta are coming out, and they just tested doing a podcast. Mark Zuckerberg just tested doing a podcast with Lex Friedman, completely in the metaverse. So what this guy did, Lex Friedman, he went to, I think, in Pennsylvania. He scanned himself in the Meta infrastructure, and so they got him completely as he was. They copied his mimic, his smile, his even his eyes were the same. Yeah. And he had this conversation with Mark Zuckerberg 100% inside the metaverse. No microphones. We could not see any microphones. They were just like in the same room talking, no headphones and microphones. But they were copies. They were avatars of each other. It was high. They were high quality avatars. And I don't like Mark Zuckerberg at all. And he said that, it's even nicer that now with the metaverse. He said, for example, me as a person, he said, I smile from the inside, but I don't express it a lot visually to other people. And with the metaverse, I have the chance that with my avatar to make it a bit more smiley, to really express what I feel inside. Which, I mean, on one hand, this is giving people opportunity. It's like, if you remember when first Facebook came out, people could be anyone they wanted to. They could turn to things, they could build their profile, they could act like they were rich, poor, or smiley, or whatever. And now it's the same thing with Instagram and TikTok. So it's pretty much, this is moving in a more 3D version. And why would someone go against the chance to be whoever they want to be just because they don't want to be alone? People are sad very often. And they really sometimes just want a chance to fill out their emptiness.
Yes, and I think that is true. And I think I believe that these technologies going up, I believe in them. I think that they have their place and their use cases for a lot of things. And I just personally see the limitations of it, like I remember when Instagram first came as well, Facebook first came, we all went through those phases, where it's sort of everything. And I think, the older I've gotten, the more it is just like, hey, like this, I think there's something that technology can't really sort of replace. And that's that feeling of, well, if one is able and has the privilege to be able to look at someone in the eyes, just a few inches away from them, and have conversation, that feeling of being sort of feeling the same temperature as someone in a room. We're sitting across from each other, getting to know each other through conversation. Yes, we could have done a video call, FaceTime, all these things, but there's just that.
Yeah, but that's what Metaverse is doing. They are being so accurate. It's like they are in the same room, and I'm pretty sure they will.
I think that's the thing that we have to understand. They're not. I think we can get very, very close to that. You can then, if you ever watched, I don't know, what was the Amazon series, which is about like where after you die, it's upload, right? And then you can upload your consciousness after death and and you live in this great beyond and such. And then people can visit you in this great beyond and who are still alive, and you put on these suits, that like have all these sensors and whatever. But do you see, what we're trying to do is we're just trying to get as close to the real thing, but given the option, we would want the real thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because case of point, would you have a full-blown intimate relationship in terms of like spending time, get married to someone with that, but you guys only exist and only communicate on the metaverse?
Definitely not. I wouldn't choose the metaverse. But I think that's their biggest challenge. How to make people intimate in the metaverse. how to make people that close. So far, the guy that I don't like, he was talking about like playing games together, of course, having meetings. That would be the easiest thing because people don't need to interact that much physically. And he was asked about if they can do that, they can create the avatar of a dead person and to make the dead person speak as if he was alive, in a sense, to get all his the feelings that he or she had during their lifetime and thoughts and the ideas, and to learn this as a machine, to do some machine learning and create the avatar. He didn't say no, but he said we don't have to wait until a person dies to have a duplicate avatar of a person. For example, it could be you, that you just create an avatar of yourself, and because of your fans, you can be with your fans all the time because you have your things, but you also like to interact with your fans. So you have your avatar take care of your fans, and your fans don't have to wait for the avatar. It's available in every computer.
Yeah.
It's like pretty much like AI now, even though it feels like you're talking to a real person on the other side. It's in millions of computers at the same time.
Yeah.
That's the same thing he wants to achieve with the metaverse, and that, I repeat, he didn't say no to duplicating dead people.
Yeah, I think for me, I have that limit. I do believe, everything needs to end. The curtain comes down on everything, and I think that's the beauty. I think where knowing that there is some sort of end. Questions of what happens afterwards. That's a whole different thing.
Yeah.
But just knowing that our time is finite and is limited, I think that just makes it sweeter. It's let's go all Robin Williams again. It makes us more ready to seize the day. And I think that it is great where technology is. It needs to continue to grow. It needs to continue to grow. That is something that I think is very central for us as a human species. We need to keep evolving. We need to also then, what I see back to my work and my research is one part of the other side of they're doing these documentaries and recording these Amahubo songs and interviewing, history keepers, right? Is also then making a database that, sort of basically like lexicography and all these like lexicons and a whole bunch of words that will enable artificial intelligence to also understand isiZulu, so that it can also better serve communities in the future. So I don't look at it as it's one or the other. It's almost like, when Kindle came out, I don't know if you remember, everyone was like, nobody's going to print paper books anymore. Nobody's going to.
Yeah, and they still are.
What did we quickly realize?
Well, we now have it. It's not that Kindle failed, but it's that in general, reading books has slowed down. It's not that they keep reading as much as they used to in paper form.
Of course, yes.
So Kindle, I think it's a different topic because people are not reading that much anymore. It's not that they are not reading Kindle and they didn't like Kindle.
Oh, no. Kindle's amazing. Yeah. Saying more of I think it was something I was watching where we was talking about, the human need for this impending annihilation or doom, where, new technology comes out and it's like everything is going to end now, the world as we know it has changed forever. The world as we know it has changed forever and ever since the dawn of time. For example, me being born in South Africa in 1995, 1 year after the end of apartheid and being born free, that time and transition was the end of the world as we know it, and, as if you go back to being like, on this podcast and, expat, which I also find is a funny term to sort of think of myself as, where normally people who look like me would just be called an immigrant, or this and that. But that's also the topic that's there. Things change the entire time. And we are resistant to change, but we need change as human beings. And, I think these technologies coming in with Kindle, it was like, publishers are like, no one's going to want to touch books ever again, this and that and that. Everything needs to be digital, then sort of online. I remember working in radio during the time when online radio started going like big. You know, this is 2015 to 2016, 17. Once Howard Stern and all these guys are on Sirius XFM, people are like, oh my gosh, you know, terrestrial radio it's going to die. You know, people are not going to listen to that. And South Africa, it's still one of the biggest media. Yes, South Africa is one of the biggest media platforms in the country. You know, it's radio is big business in South Africa. You know, and I think, you know, it's just this doomsday sort of thing, you know, like off, and I understand it is there. It's just constantly just going to happen, you know. I think, and I guess it is up to us or certain people to also just try to steer, like balance the ship in a sense, you know. Like I'm of the thought that libraries are still important. A university education is very, very important. And I say that not because of what you learn, it's about who you get to be around in those formative years of your life. I don't believe that everyone has to go to university, but I believe that everybody needs to have the opportunity, if they want to go to university. And then coming out of those 4 years, they might then, you know, I think the degree on the wall matters nothing if you did not really interact and connect with your colleagues and the people that you've met on their journey.
Totally.
You know? So I think it's just about putting, you know, sort of that curated learning experience. That is that. So in terms of technologies and that, this doomsday thing, I look at it, I see it, you know, and I sometimes I feel it myself sometimes, where I'm like, oh, I'm just becoming like my parents, you know, when the internet came, it's like, don't trust anybody on the internet. You know, now, like, how many times do you open your WhatsApp, you get this, like, forward this, like, on your parents, like grandparents, forward this new thing. So WhatsApp doesn't take your data. It's just,
anyway, looking a little back in the history, we've seen many huge changes because of technology. So I'm not saying it's scary. It's absolutely lovely and amazing what they're doing. But before, let's say, the photography was invented, they were painting. And as soon as photography came out, the painters were out of job. And because first you wanted a picture of yourself, you had to hire a painter. We don't remember those times, but it must have been awful. It took you at least 6 hours to have a picture of yourself. Yeah. Now it takes half a second. Yeah. And then they were going to the theaters and they were reading magazines or newspapers at home. And then suddenly the movies come out. And then at first they were amazed, wow, this is going to change things forever. And it did. No one was printing magazines as much anymore. No one was, or at least until some time when television came out. Because what they did, they brought the movie theaters at home in a small screen, and that was fantastic. And people started to go less to the movie theaters because they had now two things to do to share their time. Yeah. And then internet came out, and then they could do more things individually now, not only one TV at home. So if you look at this, people slowly moved to a funnel where they became more individual. Until then, after the internet, we had cell phones. Yeah. Because still with the internet at home, there was one laptop or personal computers or two. Yeah. And anyway, a brother or sister would share it. Yes. And then it split it again into cell phones. Yeah. And then with social media, within one person, it split it among more personalities that people might want created with fake profiles. Yes. For example. Yes. So now it's like going to minus. From coming from this crowd of people gathering together, going to individual and mixing up and going into another crowd, but inside each person. And the thing now with AI, which I really believe is, we are lucky to live in this time because this is a revolution in, I think this will be historical, even though we may not notice it that much now, but this is historical. And we're lucky to live in those times. And I'm not saying I'm scared, but I'm very curious to see where this is going and how this funnel I'm talking about is going to develop. This personality, these artificial personalities that each one of us has created inside through the internet and mobile phones.
I think it will very much be exactly like a generational thing. I think for myself as a millennial and sort of getting closer to 30, I have really no interest in creating an avatar. I have zero interest in...
Yeah, but you're an artist.
Yes.
You're attached to human beings, and you're attached to real creations that you can touch with your hands, with your ears when you listen to your songs.
Yes.
But a lot of people are not like
Yes, exactly. So...
By the way, it's almost 8 billion people now, the planet.
Yeah.
I just found out that yesterday. I was still at 7.
Yeah.
No, it's been some time, I guess.
No, I think also we have to remember that these wide sweeping, evolutions don't hit the whole world at one time. It's like I remember the first meeting. So when I moved to Vienna, right, I hadn't really interacted with anyone that came from Eastern Europe. I didn't know Kosovo was a country. I didn't know Albania was a country, and I'm a very intelligent man. It just never came up. Yeah, in that, I was like, what? There was wars there. There was this and that. And that. And then you start speaking to people about pop culture, and I always find that very funny, seeing like the different pop culture references from my different friends, this, hodgepodge sort of international, mini UN that we have as a friend group and sort of family is then, one would be like, like in the early 2000s, we were watching like Dexter's Laboratory. That was that. I'm like, that's cool. Or that's a little bit behind there. Or sort of being like, Seinfeld was like big in the early 2000s. And I'm like, what? That's so we can see that I think we assume that our reality a lot of the time is the base experience of everybody else.
That's why traveling is very important.
Booyah.
And traveling as far as possible. Not because a lot of people say, I travel a lot. I go to Bratislava like every weekend. I go to Prague like every weekend. Yeah, but you don't see much different if you live in Vienna and you just travel like 1-2 countries around Vienna. That's nothing. No. Especially Western European countries. You just if you go to the US, you still don't see much. You see a bit of difference, like bigger highways, bigger car, bigger houses, and more consumption.
Yeah, that's pretty bad.
But it's still Western world, still white people doing the same thing like they do in Europe.
Yeah, you're playing the same game.
Yes. Yeah. And this year, I promised myself that I'm not doing any more of these short weekend trips like, let's go this weekend in Prague and drink beers because they have good beer there or things like this. Mm-hmm. No, I stopped from this and I said, okay, I better save this money. And I do one long, big trip per year. So it happened accidentally that this year I've been, in April, I was in Brazil and I was last month in Cuba.
Yeah.
And that's a difference. That's what you're talking about right now.
Yeah.
Those guys in Cuba, for example, they got social media 2 years ago. And things are going crazy there since that, because for the first time in their life, they're seeing, wow, what's going on here? Look at these guys, what they have.
You have a reference.
Yes, they now have a reference. Yes.
Yeah.
And the situation was so sad. And the funny thing, people were not sad. Were still hopeful and happy and smiley, and they loved talking to other people, and they were interacting with everyone, even though 100% of people wanted to leave the country.
Yeah.
But you don't see those things unless you leave Europe, unless you leave your home. Mm-hmm. And you have to travel. That's what we're talking about. You have to travel because we start creating this, as you said, we create this world where we live in, and we think that's the only world. But if you look at the world map, Europe is so small compared to the whole world together. Yeah. Like the biggest country in the world is China with the bigger population.
Yeah.
And most of the people haven't been there.
Nope.
They only live in Europe and they think they know what the world is, but they haven't even been in the country with most population.
Yeah. It's a funny word, sort of like, I'm well-traveled, and you sort of just like, then they just name Western European countries. And even for myself, it's something that is very, very big. Well, I love that you mentioned the travel thing, where for me, my concerted effort, especially sort of like the end of my relationship last year, I was like, well, what am I going to do to spend time with myself, but sort of get out of myself, like in the sort of like
traveling,
this gilded cage that you put yourself in, going through big transitions. And I was like, travel. I'm like, well, I'm not going to travel throughout Western Europe because I've been doing that since a kid. There's nothing that you can show me in Western Europe that I'm going to be like, oh my gosh, that's that. So then I was like, okay, let's do it. Eastern Europe, let's Central to Eastern Europe, let's roll. And this is my concerted effort. I'm time by time, I'm just trying to go a little bit further, and that applied that. But also, the main one that I want to do as well is, I think for my 30th, the plan is to do Cape to Cairo, and with 4x4s. With 4x4 vehicles, do Cape to Cairo.
Cool.
So if it's not 30th, at least in my 30s, at least, because it's a huge undertaking. Also,
how long did it take you? 1 month?
Probably more. Yeah. So luckily, I have quite a lot of months off, and I think by that time I would probably have my sabbatical year. So run it. So because as a young African, I've traveled to way more countries in Europe and Eastern Europe than I have in Africa. It's ridiculous. I only traveled to Lesotho, and I lived in South Africa for 24 years. My whole province literally is right next to Lesotho. It's a country within our country. Never had been in 24 years.
Yeah.
It took me living in Vienna, finding a videographer, and now friend and sort of companion who is from there. And then while we were in South Africa, he was like, "Let's go," and I'm like, "Yeah, why not?" And they coming there, I was like, "What? I've never been."
Or was it much different from your country?
I would say it was mostly just. I think this is the thing about it. It was just the cultural nuances are different, and obviously the language, of course. But it was just like, my gosh, like, in my head, I thought, and I did say, I thought, Lesotho was just a backwaters, sort of little country, the tiny little country kingdom of that. And this also has to come with education and and sort of growing up in this very sort of bourgeoisie private school bubble, in South Africa, where, even in South Africa, we have our own sort of, like we look down on certain places, like me from the East Coast, I'm like Cape Town, I'm like, meh, that's like Los Angeles of South Africa. I'm not really a big fan. I'll go there to visit friends, then I just come back as quickly as possible. So we have also these within one country, we have these sort of like, people from Johannesburg or Gauteng, that's with Pretoria and Johannesburg. We have these different views on that. So even then traveling within your own country sort of opens up so much, where, I think the thing that I did in the first year of living in Vienna, especially in that first summer or so and COVID, was traveling Austria and doing so since, really trying to visit friends from different places in Austria and seeing that. It changed my entire perspective, of what it means to be living in Austria.
What did you think about the rest of Austria compared to Vienna?
Oh, absolutely amazing. Absolutely amazing. My favorite place, because I also love hiking. It's a huge hobby of mine. And, seeing the nature is great. But then meeting the people outside of Austria, outside of Vienna, night and day. Night and day. I will tell you straightforward that, like, I know it sounds so mean, but like Vienna is not like Austria. It is, I guess, one of the best coming together of sort of a huge international community and a huge community of Austrians either born in Vienna or from the outskirts. It is a capital city. It is a hub. It is a melting place. And there's certain things that I love about Vienna that are untouchable across most European cities, like mit Abstand. Like there's that. And then there's just these things within some Austrian little towns or places, where you're just like, this is peace. This is bliss. This is, even just going like 30 minutes out of Vienna, like have a friend who lives in Himberg, and, we go there and it's just like, my gosh, this is pure bliss. I could retire here, so travel, as we said, is so important. And it's something that I think it changes your perspective and your perception, right? the change of perspective and then changing your perceptions. And I think it challenges you, especially when as you say, travel to somewhere that is not familiar to you.
Yeah.
You know, like I'm looking forward to traveling to India and also then sort of Central Africa as well, going around there, because I don't speak a language anywhere close to that. I know one or two things here. Yes, I can speak French, so maybe I will get away in the West when I go around the West. But even then, it's sort of, I don't know. I don't know. Then the funniest is these are people that look like me.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, well, but they don't sound like me. But that's even another challenge, which I think, this time, especially for Africa and what's happening in Africa, it is important that we travel more and get to know our fellow man, because I think with that also what I found is it really, really helps sort of bring down these barriers that we have or preconceived notions about each other. I'm not saying that, I'm not sort of like being like, let's be like Emily in Paris, like, travel heals everything, like a Pinterest, like board thing. But I think, individually travel, I think is the best investment that one can make for themselves, especially as a millennial, because we can't afford to buy houses.
Yeah.
So
that's true. I listen to my parents complaining about their generation, saying, "Oh, we didn't have this, we didn't have that, we didn't have phones, we didn't have internet." Yes, but you had an apartment, which was your own. Everyone has an apartment from that generation. Now try to buy an apartment now; it's impossible.
Yeah, you bought it for 2 packs of cigarettes and a donkey, bro.
Yeah. Don't tell me you missed. Don't tell me you missed a brownie, a cake, because there were no cake at the time when you grew up in Albania.
Yeah. It is interesting.
Now we pay the rent for the rest of our lives, or we pay the bank's credit for the rest of our life.
I ain't trying to do that. No.
So, there's no problem with renting sometimes.
Yeah, I think especially in Vienna, renters' rights are amazing. Renters' rights are pretty amazing.
Plus, gives you the opportunity to, as we said again, to move around and to travel. You don't like the apartment, you just quit the apartment for the next 6 months because you travel, you go on sabbatical, and that's it. Then you suddenly decide to move to a new country.
Yeah.
And then you don't have to have the pain in the ass to have to deal with the apartment that you have in Vienna, to either rent it out, which you don't make a lot of money if you rent out an apartment in Vienna because of this grants that the government puts, the city of Vienna puts, that you're not allowed to give it the price that you want. You can't just give it any price.
Yeah.
So it's not really a business to rent out an apartment in Vienna. And at the end of the day, why did you buy an apartment in Vienna? Because the world is so big and you just decide to live it, which is a great city, but also life happens just once.
Yeah.
As we were saying before,
True.
This is limited.
Yes, it is limited.
Yes, maybe not now, maybe not during the career or something, but when you retire, you don't want to travel to see what you missed about life. A lot of beautiful countries, a lot of beautiful people. I don't know, marry 100 times. Who cares?
I think my retirement plans definitely, I think I started planning for them now. My plan is just, 3 months South Africa, 9 months Austria, and that's it. That's it. That's all I will teach until the wheels fall off. Teach until the wheels fall off, and then maybe at like 80, then I'll probably do like 9 months South Africa, 3 months Austria or something. And most of that will just be spent on my family farm, man. Just
would there need to be
that's it.
Would there need to be one only small problem that during summertime in Vienna, it's winter time in South Africa?
Yeah, so I fly down when it's winter in Vienna.
You don't teach during winter time here?
Well, I mean when I'm retired.
Oh, you mean when you're retired? Okay, sorry, I thought you said like in the next years or something. No, when you're retired, yeah, definitely.
The cold?
Yeah.
Like as soon as the Christmas markets are like sort of like teetering out, I'm gone. Book that ticket. Let's go. Let's go. So, because I grew up having Christmas on the beach, right? So this like cold Christmas thing, like it's cute the first time. The first year's like, oh my God, snow. Okay. But like that second, I was like, this is ridiculous.
Yeah.
This is absolutely
It's boring.
ridiculous.
It's annoying. It's cold. You have to dress yourself with 100 clothes just to go and get something quick to the supermarket. What about the Kingdom of Law? Where did you record it? And
I record it myself. So all my production I do by myself.
You have a mini studio at home or
yes.
big studio at home?
I've got a couple of places that I record, right? So I have like a main studio where I do my my documentary and soundtrack, because the interesting thing about this Kingdom of Love is some of the songs are actually going to feature onto the documentary, and then some of the songs that were meant to be on the Kingdom of Love are just part of the soundtrack of that, because it's sort of the idea of Sounds Like History, and that is sort of like the Kingdom of Love is an epic tale, and Sounds Like History is a tale about epic tales of history also. So that's that. And then now, thankfully, and sort of rather blessed to be moving to like a bigger space, and now here more central. And now I was in the 6th, and now moving to sort of closer into the city. And I will have a studio space there as well. So, sort of wherever I want to do stuff and edit, you
just go to the other room and you have it there. You just go to the next room and
that's pretty much fun. I'm sort of nerding out about like how I'm going to do like all the acoustic treating and stuff. So.
But I love the songs of Kingdom of Love. They are on Spotify, right?
Not yet.
But which one did I listen to?
Mein Wein in Wien.
Mein Wein in Wien.
Mein Wein in Wien. Yes, so that's the.
But when is the Kingdom of Love coming out?
It's meant to be out in, I've just said, autumn 2023. So I guess by November. And if not, then.
But how can I find out about it?
I guess the best is just to follow me on Instagram. That's the best, and the links will be there. Because as well, my sort of marketing strategy is more geared towards the live scene. So if you want to hear songs from the Kingdom of Love, you can hear them because I play them pretty regularly. So the next show is on the 26th of October at Shabin International. So we'll be playing there with a band.
Where?
Shabin,
okay. The pub.
Yeah, the pub. So is that. And then we'll be playing in Slovakia on the 30th in Bratislava. So that's as well there. So you can actually hear the songs live as they're intended to be.
Well, it'd be cool to listen to you on the 26th.
Yes.
Actually, I've never listened to you live. I might as well
come along. It's a whole different experience.
Yeah.
As I said, it's.
How about the documentary?
The documentary.
Will it be open to everyone to see? Will we get a chance?
Dear, and I should say, inshallah. Inshallah is to debut it in the summer, next summer. I would like to sort of have it at an outdoor theater, sort of thing. Obviously free to the public or so, whatever. Because I wanted to do like a cinema. And then I was like, okay, but if it's a cinema, I would like to charge, then I would have to charge people to watch it. And I think for me, I'm very sort of like, I'm like Chance the Rapper in the feed, like keep it free, keep it accessible.
Yeah.
You can make your money on other things on the back end. I make tour and this and that. And, I'm not half bad as a businessman. So I sort of don't really need to worry about that. So that's that. So hopefully in next summer, it will have the first filming, like the first screening of that. And then after that, I would then have it on a website, and people can sort of like donate a whatever thing from there. So anywhere from probably like €5 to 100,000 if you're feeling like spoiling this man over here. Shout out to any sugar mamas out there.
Well, you heard him, and I'll listen to him on the 26th of October at Schiben International Pub. That's in Lerchenfelderstraße. I forgot the number. It's around the 18th or 100 something, but I guess everyone who's listening to this podcast already knows where Schiben International Pub is. He's an academic rock star.
Academic rock star, that is it.
Thank you.
It is my pleasure.
Thank you very much.
And see you guys out on the flip side. See you guys live, yeah?
All right. Bye, everyone.